Getting that out to local elections, and was there any additional cost for that?
We were able to get that all turned around thanks to the diligent work of the folks at the 88 County Boards of Elections and my staff working together. We got those issues and all of the other ballot issues essentially resolved so that the ballots could go out to the UOCAVA voters on time. And then they have been working since that point to make sure that they're prepared for the ballots to go out tomorrow. And so things are on track. I am not aware that of any circumstance where the ballot length on issue 2 is going to increase the cost for a voter. Whether or not it increased the cost for a local board of election really depends on what else was on their ballot, whether they used an electronic system for in-person voting, and all of those kinds of things will be variance in whether or not there was a cost issue there for the local boards of elections. But in the end, we were able to comply with what the court asked us to in a way that we felt secure that we were complying and also minimizing the length that we had to contend with regarding the ballot.
Given the fact that you've got I'm assuming going to have a record number of absentee ballots this time around, what happens in a situation where somebody requests an absentee ballot, doesn't return it, and then shows up at the polls on election day?
Okay. If they request an absentee ballot, okay, and again, this gets at why I believe the legislature, because someone asked me a question about litigation earlier. I don't take the litigation personally because it's really the law that is in question. It's not, for the most part, things that we are doing here. We're just implementing the law, and in this particular case, you point out a perfect issue that we need to account for. Because as we have created this expansive opportunity for ballots to go out via mail, that means that we could have, well, we already have nearly 1 million, we could have millions, potentially, of absentee ballots that will be in various stages, from going out to the voters, to being returned by the voters, to being not returned by the voters. And so there was that time period that the local boards of elections requested that they have time to account for where those ballots are, where the ballot, if the ballot's been sent out and not returned, if the ballot's been sent out and returned, and that needs to be noted in the poll books that go out to the 9,800 polling locations on election day. All right, and there are 40,000 poll workers, 9,800 precinct locations where those books need to go, and they need some time to account for where those ballots are, so that nobody votes twice. Okay, so that's why those rules. That's why that it's important that that information is accurate. So if you've requested a ballot, then you didn't return it, or somebody requests a ballot and maybe they return it but didn't remember whether they returned it. It could be in various. It wouldn't necessarily be because somebody didn't return it or is trying to defraud the system. It's just they could have forgotten whether they returned it or not. They say, I just want to make sure. So they go down to their polling location on election day and say, hey, I requested an absentee ballot. I think I mailed it in. I'm not sure. Well, they wouldn't know whether you had maybe mailed that in or not, depending on when you did it. So, but if you were noted as having received one, they could then say, hey, okay, you'll vote a provisional ballot. So what a voter will do is they'll vote a provisional ballot on election day if they've made that request. And then at that point in time, that provisional ballot will then be checked up against their voter record to make sure that they've only voted a single ballot. And then that vote will be counted 10 days after the election. So that's why we've been trying to reduce the number of provisional ballots by having folks vote early in person, early by mail, or on election day with the proper address and everything that they need to avoid voting a provisional ballot.
Secretary, is there a percentage of, if there's 161,000 requests, is there a percentage of those that are actually returned?
161,000.
For early votes or early ballots, if there's a request of an early ballot, how many of those are returned, actually are voted?
I don't know the answer to that question about how many are. I mean, we won't know how many aren't voted until the stats come.
I mean, is there typically from elections past, is there typically 8 out of 10?
That information is available. believe online, if you look at the 2008 stats, there are a number of folks who receive them and don't return at all, or don't show up on election day. So sometimes it's hard to know. You have to ask those who didn't return it why they didn't.
But the poll book will reflect who returned it, not who asked for it.
The poll book should reflect ballots that have been sent and received.
Now, if people have questions about their paper ballot, because you know, you said a lot of people are doing this for the first time on paper ballots, there's a lot of instructions on there. A lot of people aren't really keen on reading instructions. So,
Well, let me just interrupt and say that we make it easy, but there are rules. There are rules for running an election. You have to follow those rules, all right? We try to make it as easy as possible, but that doesn't mean that you can vote by any rule or any standard that you want to vote by. You have to follow the rules, and that goes from voters to observers to people in the political process. We have a set of laws and rules, and you have to follow those rules. And so when you get a ballot, we try to make it clear as to what the instructions are, and you need to make sure you follow the instructions.
if someone finds it too confusing, say they ordered a paper ballot and they think, man, I have to read a whole page of words here, and I'm not a keen reader, they can, you know, like go down to the Board of Elections, as long as they don't return that ballot. They can go down to the Board of Elections on Election Day and vote, right?
They can. They would vote provisionally, and they would find that there would be a lot of instructions in following that perhaps even more than just voting the mail-in ballot, because you're going to have to provide all of that data again to vote a provisional ballot. And it is easy. You've got a menu. You've got a menu of options as to how you can cast your ballot in the state. It's maybe as easy as anywhere when you consider all of the menu of options that we have: mail, early, person, all day on election day. And even if you don't do any of those things, right, you still have the provisional option on election day. But if you request your ballot early, you have 35 days. You can go through a page a day, Joe. You can just go through a page a day over the course of 35 days, and you'll eventually get through it. That's how I'm voting this year. I'm voting mail-in ballot this year because it's I'm busy during election season. I like to have a little time to sit down and look at my ballot, make sure I can work through the instructions and get that back on time.
What did you do in prior elections?
You know what? In preparation, I've voted every way that you've been allowed to vote. So before I even ran for this office, as I was thinking about it, I made sure that I voted in person early. I voted by mail before, and I've obviously voted at my precinct on election day. So I voted all of them, everything that we have to offer.
But
just
you
to make sure that I do.
You trust that your vote will be counted no matter which way you cast it?
Oh, of course. Ohio's system of elections is a great system of elections. And I don't just mean because of the job I'm doing as Secretary of State. We have professionals at the local level that have taken this job seriously. This has been something that they have prepared for. We have had probably as much training for poll workers and elections officials, getting our directives out as early as possible so that everybody knew what the rules were and were prepared for and are prepared for this election. So you can, I would put our system of elections up against anybody's in the country.
And what are the rules for observers on election day in terms of actually being at the polling place?
We have a list of those rules. I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but Matt or Maggie can certainly get those to you. I don't know that they have changed. I don't know that they have changed from the last time. We're basically operating under the same rules.
Are you seeing more interest in people wanting to be observers or challengers at the polling place?
I can't give you a hard number on that, but I don't really see any more interest in that than there has ever been. As a matter of fact, anecdotally, I would say it may even be down. But again, I can't put a number to that.